Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, a guilty verdict followed by chaos in the courtroom. The man accused of trying to kill Donald Trump representing himself in court found guilty on all 5 charges, then attempting to stab himself in the neck with a pen before officers dragged him out of the courtroom.
I'm Victor Oquendo in Miami. Ryan Routh found guilty of attempting to assassinate Donald Trump. We have the details, the bizarre events inside the courtroom.
Today, President Trump addressing the United Nations General Assembly here in New York, issuing harsh words for the world leaders who represent it.
Your countries are going to hell.
Calling out U.S. allies for recognizing a Palestinian state, their stances on migration, and in an extraordinary shift, the president now says Ukraine can win the war with Russia.
I'm Rachel Scott here at the United Nations with details on that change of tone and the reaction to the president's speech.
As those world leaders convene, the Secret Service foils a plot that could have caused a communications blackout in New York and shut down cell phone networks so that they could spy on leaders who are gathered here in New York City.
I'm Pierre Thomas. I'll tell you how agents uncovered that covert operation and who they say is behind it.
Major medical groups push back on the president's message linking autism to the use of Tylenol by pregnant women, causing confusion for patients and headaches for doctors. We look at the research behind the announcement and get a reality check for parents. And it's the site of a plane crash that happened more than 50 years ago. Hidden here among the glaciers and lagoons of Iceland, it's become an unlikely tourist hotspot, even featured in some of the biggest music videos in the world. What really happened here all those years ago?
Wanted to come back and set the record straight about how it got here. I think the real story is every bit as interesting, maybe more interesting than the false one.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin with the shocking turn at the end of the federal trial over the attempted assassination of President Trump. Moments after defendant Ryan Routh was found guilty on all counts in Fort Pierce, Florida, authorities say he tried to stab himself in the neck. Court sketches depict the dramatic scene, 4 armed marshals forcibly removing him from the courtroom. Ryan Routh was charged with trying to kill then-candidate Trump while Trump was golfing at his club in West Palm Beach last year. The Secret Service said that Routh was found with a rifle in a sniper's nest near the 6th hole. Routh defended himself at trial, at times frustrating Judge Aileen Cannon. He told the jury that he lacked the capability to harm another human being. It only took about 2 hours for the jury to reach its verdict, and President Trump responded tonight saying, quote, "Justice was served." ABC's Victor Oquendo leads us off tonight from Florida. Hi, Victor.
Hey, Lindsay, it was a frightening scene inside the courthouse in the trial for Ryan Routh. After the verdict was read, he attempted to harm himself. Tonight, the explosive moment in court after Ryan Routh was found guilty on all accounts of attempting to assassinate Donald Trump on his Florida golf course. Routh attempting to stab himself in the neck with a pen, shown in this courtroom sketch. Officers then swarming him and dragging him out of the room. A jury of 7 women and 5 men deliberating for just 2 hours. Routh now facing up to life in prison on 5 federal charges. President Trump praising the verdict, saying justice was served.
I'm very appreciative of the justice that was given and the way it was handled by Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche.
The fast-paced trial just a year after the incident, lasting just 12 days. Routh representing himself, deciding not to take the stand, calling only 3 witnesses in his defense. In his closing arguments, the 59-year-old spoke about himself in the third person, telling the jury the prime opportunity was there for the defendant to shoot the president, and yet the trigger was never pulled, arguing he is innocent. This human being does not have the capability to harm another human being. But the prosecution said Routh planned for weeks, making 17 trips to scope out Trump International in West Palm Beach, pointing to this note they say was handwritten by Routh. "Dear world, this was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I am so sorry I failed you." Last September, a Secret Service agent spotting a rifle pointing out of the bushes. One agent opening fire. Routh fleeing the scene.
Shots fired, shots fired, shots fired. Individual in the bush with a gun.
Authorities later tracking Routh down and arresting him on the side of the road.
Victor joins us now. Victor, what's Routh's condition tonight?
Lindsay, sources tell us that pen that Ryan Routh used to try to stab himself is specially designed to prevent injuries. So he was just left with some marks and bruises. He'll be sentenced in December. Lindsay?
Victor Kendo for us. Thanks so much, Victor. Your countries are going to hell. That was the blunt message from President Trump in his address at the UN General Assembly in New York today. The president stood before the world body and criticized the UN, saying it's not even coming close to living up to its potential. We have the head of the International Rescue Committee standing by with us for more. But first, Rachel Scott reports from the UN. Hi, Rachel.
Well, Lindsay, this was a highly anticipated speech by President Trump here on the world stage at the United Nations, particularly because of his close relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin. But tonight, a change in tone from the president. Tonight, President Trump taking aim at the United Nations, attacking the member countries as their leaders sat and watched.
Your countries are going to hell.
The president frustrated from the start when his teleprompter wasn't working.
I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
Earlier, when he arrived with the First Lady, the escalator they were riding abruptly stopped, forcing them to walk up. At the podium,
These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much.
the president then lashing out.
It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war.
The president, who we all know very well, and he's a brave man.
Later, President Trump turning to the war in Ukraine, seeming to surprise Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky by declaring NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft that enter their airspace. Russian aircraft have recently flown over both Poland and Estonia.
Mr. President, do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace?
Yes, I do.
The president asked if the U.S. would be ready to back up NATO if that happens.
Depends on the circumstance, but, we're very strong toward NATO.
President Trump has gone back and forth on the war for months, one day supporting Ukraine and the next embracing Vladimir Putin. Just 5 weeks ago, rolling out the red carpet on American soil, clapping as the Russian leader approached, warmly shaking his hand. But today, a break.
Unfortunately, that relationship didn't mean anything, unfortunately.
And then from the president, a major reversal. Where just a few weeks ago, he implied Russia could keep some of the Ukrainian land it had stolen. Tonight, President Trump posting, "I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form."
We'll let them get their land back.
Yep.
So we'll see how it all works out.
Had to be an interesting phone conversation there. Rachel Scott joins us now from outside the United Nations. So, Rachel, what is President Trump now saying about his relationship with Vladimir Putin?
Well, the president was pretty blunt today in admitting that he thought that it would be easier to try to broker a ceasefire or peace between Russia and Ukraine because of his relationship, particularly with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And now the president saying today that his relationship in the end did not mean anything at all. Russia is continuing to attack Ukraine tonight and is now provoking NATO countries. The big question tonight, Lindsay, is what, if anything, is the U.S. going to try to do to stop him? Lindsay?
Rachel Scott from the United Nations. Thanks so much, Rachel. For more now, we're joined by the former UK Foreign Minister and the head of the International Rescue Committee, David Muir. Thank you so much for joining us. In an op-ed in Time today, you argue that the UN is failing its core mission. I just want to play a portion of what President Trump had to say today.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential.
Do you agree with President Trump that the UN is not living up to its potential?
Well, the United Nations is only as strong as the member states allow it to be. And the central point of my article is that the United Nations has a very clear purpose. It was founded 80 years ago to ensure that, quote unquote, the scourge of war was removed from future generations. Today, I'm leading a humanitarian agency, and there are 59 conflicts going on around the world. And the fundamental reason for that is that the political structures of the UN are gridlocked by differences between member states. in the Security Council and beyond. See this as a critical challenge if we're to sustain a managed global order.
So in your assessment, what should happen now?
I think that the critical issue is not to write new laws. We've got good rules that were established after 1945. The critical thing is to uphold them. And there are a couple of things that are essential to that. One, I think that the UN is better when the United States is engaged. When the United States pulls out, as it has from the World Health Organization, as it has from the World Climate Talks, that actually weakens the UN as well as weakening the US. Secondly, I think it's imperative that we put civilians back center stage. The first words of the UN Charter that was agreed 80 years ago are "we the peoples of the globe." And those people were given rights in international law for the first time, above all for civilians in war, rights to life and livelihood. We've got to bring that back center stage in the operation of the Security Council and more widely.
You've talked about how foreign aid funding is critical to help the world deal with conflicts. With the U.S. disbanding USAID and stepping back from leadership on this issue, have other countries or private donors been able to fill the gaps?
The short answer is no. The US was 30 to 35% of the global aid infrastructure. It's now massively reduced. That 84% of US grants and contracts, according to Secretary Rubio, have been cancelled. We've seen that my own organization, 2 million clients no longer getting services that they were previously relying on for education in Afghanistan, for help for refugees in South Sudan. So it's fundamental. I have to say the European Union has made a long-term commitment to its international engagement. So Europe's there. But newly richer countries like those in the Gulf haven't yet stepped up. And humanitarian aid is not something that China or India are stepping into. They're much more focused on their global economic links. So there's a real danger that we're going into a spiral where the needs of the poorest people in the world are rising fast, but the amount of help that's available to them is being reduced.
I've heard this saying before, if you're not scared, you're not paying attention. Curious, if there is something that keeps you up at night, what might it be?
Well, I think the rise of impunity, the idea that laws are for suckers, is very, very dangerous. I was in Sudan just last week, and that is a country where 30 million people in a population of 45 million are in humanitarian need. 3 million have fled across borders into neighboring states. And so the impunity that's claimed the lives of 120 aid workers, that's certainly center stage as I think about the challenges ahead.
IRC head David Muir, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
With the UN General Assembly underway here in New York, the Secret Service now says it disrupted a possible plan to knock out the city's entire telecommunications system. What agents say they found in apartments across the city and who they believe was responsible. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, the Secret Service says it's dismantled a covert operation that could have been used to take out cell towers throughout New York City and to conduct surveillance on world leaders in New York for the UN General Assembly. More than 300 computer servers stacked on shelves, desks, and floors, along with more than 100,000 cellular SIM cards, set up in vacant apartments in Queens, New York, Westchester, Greenwich, Connecticut, and in New Jersey, locations encircling New York City.
These devices were concentrated within 35 miles of the global meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, now underway in New York City.
A system so powerful, authorities say, it could have been used to disrupt all cell phone service for the entire city of New York, including police, fire, and EMS.
It essentially operates like hundreds of thousands of cell phones in one place doing things at massive scale.
The so-called SIM farm, capable of sending 30 million text messages a minute.
There could be really what we consider a denial of service taking over the telephone lines, but this is a SIM farm like one we have never seen before.
Sources telling ABC News the operation is connected to the Chinese government. Authorities found the SIM farm while investigating anonymous threatening calls earlier this year, targeting 3 people, including one with direct access to President Trump.
Pierre Thomas joins us now. Pierre, is there any indication that this could be connected to the UN being in New York this week?
Well, Lindsay, there have been no arrests, and investigators have not found evidence that the UN was the target. But, Lindsay, they're simply taking no chances.
Pierre Thomas for us. Thanks so much, Pierre. Tonight, Jimmy Kimmel makes his return to late-night TV for the first time since his suspension after the FCC threatened Disney over comments Kimmel made on his show following the death of Charlie Kirk. Influential podcaster Joe Rogan is now weighing in. ABC's Trevor Ault reports.
It's Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Tonight, Jimmy Kimmel will be back on the air after Disney ABC paused the show indefinitely following comments Kimmel made about the ideology of the suspect in Charlie Kirk's killing. In announcing Kimmel's return, Disney says, last Wednesday we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It is a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. The temporary pause came after President Trump's FCC chairman Brendan Carr pressured local ABC stations to stop airing Kimmel's late-night show.
We can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Disney ABC then suspended Kimmel's show indefinitely to allow for discussions with Kimmel and his team. What followed was a very public debate over free speech in this country, critics suggesting the move was caving to political pressure. Even some Republicans and well-known conservatives speaking out. Republican Senator Ted Cruz comparing Brendan Carr's comments to those of a mafia boss.
He says, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way.
Yeah.
And I got to say, that's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of a mafioso coming into a bar going, nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
And just today, influential podcaster Joe Rogan saying the government should not be involved in what a comedian can or cannot say.
I definitely don't think that the government should be involved ever in dictating what a comedian can or cannot say in a monologue. That's crazy.
Today, Kimmel's show posting an image of Jimmy Kimmel and his longtime sidekick Guillermo captioned, "We are back full of love." The show is expected to welcome actor Glenn Powell and musician Sarah McLachlan as Kimmel's first guests. Tonight, two station groups that own some ABC stations, Nexstar and Sinclair, have indicated their local ABC affiliates will not air Jimmy Kimmel, at least for now. Nexstar saying they want assurance that all parties are committed to fostering an environment of respectful, constructive dialogue in the markets we serve. Meantime, with Kimmel returning, millions will be watching, and Kimmel well aware of the critics on all sides amid this fierce debate over free speech.
Linsey, Disney says they decided to suspend the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation during an emotional moment for our country, and after what they called multiple thoughtful conversations with Kimmel, determined the show would return tonight. Linsey?
Trevor Ault, our thanks to you. Tonight, millions are on alert for severe storms and flash flooding. We're also tracking Hurricane Gabrielle, a Category 4 storm along the East Coast. And two other tropical disturbances are also taking shape. Let's get right to ABC's chief meteorologist, Ginger Zee. Hi, Ginger.
Hey, Linsey. So we'll start with those severe thunderstorms. We've already seen damage reports coming in from eastern Oklahoma. There's actually a gust of 61 miles per hour recorded in Stigler, Oklahoma. So if you're traveling Interstate 40 right through northwest Arkansas, you're in that tornado watch over to Clinton. Now, Little Rock's in the flood watch, and then we've got Sherman, Texas, Texarkana in a severe thunderstorm watch. That's through later tonight. And so you can see damaging wind as the main hazard, but of course an isolated tornado can't be ruled out. Then we talk about the East Coast, and we've got rip current risk up, even though Gabrielle is so far away. It's way east of Bermuda, but the Atlantic is riled up. It's not only riled up, but it is heating up. We've got two areas of interest that the National Hurricane Center is watching, the 90% and 60% chance that those become our next tropical depression. We think by the end of the week or start of the weekend, we could have our next named storm even, and the next name on the list, Linsey, is Umberto.
Ginger Zee for us. Thanks so much. Quite an active season it's starting out to be. Attorneys for Sean Diddy Combs are asking a judge to sentence him to no more than 14 months in prison, which would effectively be the time he's already served. In the new court filing, Combs' legal team said he's already been punished enough and that he wants to be with his loved ones. A sentencing hearing is expected on October 3rd. Combs was convicted in July on 2 counts related to prostitution. Each count carries a maximum penalty of 10 years. Coming up, flames spread through a home with a bedridden woman inside. See the heart-stopping rescue. And President Trump's autism announcement has put more attention on the condition. But what do the actual scientific studies show about autism, vaccines, and Tylenol? Plus, the driver of a stolen car attempts to jump a drawbridge to evade police. See what happened next. Welcome back. Tonight, a growing list of major medical groups are strongly pushing back against the White House 24 hours after President Trump claimed the use of Tylenol during pregnancy may be linked to an increased risk of autism. Here's our Steve Osinsami.
The pushback from the world's leading doctors and medical groups is growing tonight to nearly a dozen organizations, all rejecting the president's claims that acetaminophen, the main ingredient in Tylenol, is tied to any increase in pregnant women delivering autistic babies.
We shouldn't do anything different than we were doing regarding mothers taking Tylenol during pregnancy. I think what parents should do, I think what physicians should do, is ignore this press conference.
Effective immediately.
The press conference was what President Trump and his health secretary RFK Jr. have been promising all year, some answers to the complex questions of what causes autism. Their critics tonight say that they're overly relying on one study from Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, showing a possible link between Tylenol use and autism, which they say the administration uses to wrongly blame a very useful painkiller that women need to reduce fevers and protect their pregnancies.
Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good.
Doctors across America are now trying to calm the worry. This Boston obstetrician is telling her pregnant patients that Tylenol is safe to take when you need it.
My advice is really likely to be to continue to think about taking the lowest dose of acetaminophen that's possible that is solving the need.
Sarah Sandoval in Houston is due to deliver her child in the next several weeks. She says she's choosing to trust her doctor more than anyone else.
If a doctor who has, 30 plus years of experience, delivered countless babies, advises or says it's okay, right? Like, I'm going to listen to my doctor.
Joining us now to help separate the president's opinions from what scientific studies have found is pediatrician Dr. Edith Bracho Sanchez. Thank you so much, doctor, for coming on. The president and Secretary Kennedy have often suggested without evidence that childhood vaccines may cause autism. What have the rigorously performed studies actually shown?
Linsey, I'm so glad we're talking about this. It has been decades and decades of studies around the world of millions of children, and vaccines simply do not cause autism. I think this is part of what was so disappointing about the press conference yesterday. I think we were waiting for new data, new science, and unfortunately what we saw was the same playbook recycled and the same pointing towards things that have been unproven, such as vaccines causing autism, Linsey.
The president has often inaccurately described vaccines children receive as horse-sized, seeming to suggest vaccines can somehow overwhelm a child's immune system. Is there any truth to this?
There is absolutely no truth to this, Linsey. And the way that I explain it to my patients in my practice is that if you take your child to the playground today, if you take the subway, as we do here in New York City, they are exposed to more antigens, which are the foreign substances that activate the immune system, than they ever would be through vaccines. So this notion that we are overwhelming a child's immune system simply is not true. And the protection that we are giving children is life-saving, Linsey.
Just yesterday, the president said, if you're pregnant, don't take Tylenol, don't give it to babies. Yet Tylenol or acetaminophen has long been considered to be the only safe painkiller during pregnancy for use. There have been dozens of studies on Tylenol, autism, and ADHD. And what have those studies found?
Yes, Linsey. So I have been looking at this from both a professional perspective, but also a personal one. I happen to be pregnant at the time that we are speaking today. I happened to get sick several weeks ago and opted to take Tylenol. So to tell you a little more, this link has been scrutinized for over a decade now. And what we know is that some of the studies found an association between Tylenol use and the risk of developing autism or ADHD. But, and so important to know this, it was not a causation, meaning it did not establish Tylenol as the cause. I cream sales go up in the summer, violent crime goes up in the summer. The two are not related by a causal link, meaning ice cream doesn't cause crime, but they are related through the heat in the summer. Tylenol does not cause autism, and that is so important for all parents out there who may already have a child with autism or expecting moms like myself who are making decisions right now based on this information, Linsey.
So there's a correlation, but it's not causal. Very important distinction to make. Conversely, is there any link between pain and high fevers and whether they can affect the neurobiological development of a child?
We know, Linsey, that a high fever in pregnancy, if it goes untreated, poses risk to both the mom and the baby. We're talking about risk of early labor, of birth defects, heart defects, neurodevelopmental defects.
Very important to hear you say that as a pediatrician and a pregnant woman. We've also been learning about the administration's attempts to fast track the drug leucovorin to treat autism. Why this drug, and is there any evidence that it could be a treatment for autism?
Leucovorin, also known as folinic acid, is that it helps absorb folic acid into the brain. So some children with autism are thought to have issues with absorbing folic acid into the brain. And what this drug does is that it helps them do so. Now, again, some promise being shown by this drug, and super important to continue to study it, but it is not a magic pill. It would address the communication deficits in autism, but autism is more than that, right? And children with autism need personalized treatments that go beyond a simple drug, and we cannot lose perspective of that, Linsey.
Dr. Bracho Sanchez, we thank you so much for your time and insight. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Coming up, the major change coming to the major leagues next year, why human umpires will no longer have the last say on calling balls and strikes. And it's been more than 50 years since this U.S. military plane crashed on a remote beach in Iceland. So why is it still there? ABC News travels back with the co-pilot who's visiting the site for the first time since the crash as he tells the true story of what really happened. Welcome back, everyone. More than 50 years later, a piece of history sits in Iceland. Tourists travel hours just to take a photo at what's become one of the country's must-see sights. A recent visitor, the man who was in the cockpit when it went down, returns to the wreckage for the first time. ABC's Maggie Rulli was there as he reminisced about that day.
Hidden among the glaciers, lagoons, and fjords of Iceland is an unlikely tourist hotspot. In the land of fire and ice, it's this rotting hunk of metal that's now become a must-visit destination.
It's a plane crash. I highly recommend checking it out if you're in Iceland.
Everybody hold on!
This weathered American military plane has been abandoned on this black sand beach for more than 50 years, since it crashed on the Sólhemasandur coast in 1973. We traveled to Iceland, making the hours-long journey.
This landscape's incredible. You do feel like you're just on an entirely different planet.
To find out why this U.S. Navy plane ended up here and what happened to those on board. Decades on, the mystery and beauty of this crash has now taken on a life of its own. It was first featured in Icelandic rock band Sigur Rós' visual album Heima. Then in the Bollywood film Diwali.
Don't forget that I'm real.
And when Justin Bieber skateboarded across the top of it in his I'll Show You music video, the landmark's popularity skyrocketed and cemented its place in pop culture.
We actually, in tourism in Iceland, we call this the Justin Bieber effect. When something happens that kind of blows up a new place or a new destination or some point of interest that wasn't very interesting before.
The eerie terrain inspiring some to even take Star Trek-inspired photos on location.
It's incredible to be standing here knowing that hundreds of people make the trek here every day to this plane crash in the middle of miles and miles of barren, remote landscape.
Like every single person I've heard has talked about this plane wreck.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it about a plane wreck on the beach that feels so alluring?
It's just that picture of that plane there sitting here for so many years and enduring.
thousands of miles away in Memphis.
We've just finished packing for our Iceland adventure.
Greg Fletcher is making his way to Iceland.
Beautiful.
But Greg has been here before, more than 5 decades ago.
It's still a unique place, and I owe my life to that airplane.
And what's it like being here?
It's surreal. It's surreal.
It was Greg who crash-landed that plane, and today he'll finally reunite with what he calls the old bird.
Good grief. What a sight. That's where I was sitting. Nice. You know, I'm actually glad that it's here and become this magnet for tourists. It's this sort of iconic thing. Wanted to come back and set the record straight about how it got here. I think the real story is every bit as interesting, maybe more interesting than the false one.
What's the false one?
The false one is that the pilots ran out of gas or shifted to the wrong fuel tank. And that's, you know, not how it happened.
Back in 1973, Greg was just 26 and was out flying the day before Thanksgiving.
One of the worst days and one of the best days of my life. I was a very lucky man. Very, very lucky.
Greg tells us he was in training out on a routine resupply mission when the lead pilot gave him the reins and the weather suddenly turned.
We encountered basically a wall of ice. The airplane started bucking and jiving like a barroom bull ride. The ice was hitting our windscreen like somebody shooting at it with a fire hose. It choked off the airflow to the engines.
With both engines dead, the crew had a difficult decision to make, gliding in low visibility in between a glacier and the frigid North Atlantic Sea.
The question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay on that course and collide with gray rocks and ice? Or is there an option?
At the last second, Greg saw the beach.
We were able to touch down on that flat sand close to the surf, and boom, came up the west bank and came to an abrupt stop.
So this is exactly what it looked like 50 plus years ago.
Correct. That was taken the day after the accident by crews that came out here to salvage the engines and the electronics and the seats and everything else that was salvageable out of the airframe.
All 7 people on board survived. And all these years later, Greg's kept a special part of the plane with him, the yoke he used to steer the plane to safety.
Yeah, I brought the yoke back. I thought they deserved to be reunited.
Yeah.
It's a talisman.
Yeah.
It reminds me of how lucky I was.
The story of the crash has become part of Icelandic legend, turning Greg into an accidental hometown hero.
So we do it this way, all right?
A local tour guide stunned when he found out who Greg was.
It's kind of like meeting a real-life Solly.
I think we can definitely thank Greg for saving all those lives and then decades later kind of creating a point of interest for Icelandic tourism. Yeah, he did a good job.
The Sólheimasandr site is part of a growing trend of wreck chasers, people who seek out these crashes around the world.
How popular is crash tourism?
I think there's enough people interested in it that there are websites that tell you where to go, and there are tens of thousands of airplane crashes that have never been cleared away, mostly military, but some commercial airplane crashes as well.
Christine Negroni is an aviation expert whose new book has taken her to crash sites from Seattle to Australia.
I think people are fascinated by air accidents, and they don't actually see them. They may see them on the news, but to actually experience it, walk around it, you know, it brings it home.
Culture's fascination with plane crashes is seen in movies like Sully.
We are unable. We may end up in the Hudson.
About the pilot behind the famous Miracle on the Hudson. And Society in the Snow, retelling the true story of a plane that crashed in the Andes. Even fictional TV series like Lost play into our obsession with surviving a plane crash.
9 times out of 10, if you're in a commercial airplane crash, you're going to survive. Your part as a passenger is to pay attention when the flight attendant is telling you what to do. Take your headsets off. Listen. Be situationally aware.
And for Christine, it's about more than the crash. It's also about the people in the cockpit and what we can learn from them.
When Greg walks around the airplane and takes a look at it and tells us his story, which is fascinating, it's really not just about Greg. It's about the pilots on board, their ability to work together, their skills, their human resiliency, and it's a real principle in why airplanes are so safe. The humans involved.
Greg stayed in the Navy for 2 more years after the crash, going on to become a lawyer, dad, and now a granddad, and says he never lost his love of flying.
People call you a hero for this landing.
I'm not a hero. I just did what I was trained to do. I was a lucky man.
Many heroes never think that they are. Our thanks to Maggie Ruley for that. Coming up, new developments for the woman accused of a scheme to steal Elvis's Graceland estate, the prison sentence she was just handed down. And she was part of the internationally famous girl group Little Mix. Now she's stepping out on her own. Jade tells us all about this next chapter in her career. The race to rescue a bedridden woman as her house is engulfed in flames. You can see a robot umpire at your next MLB game, and it's that time of year again, Fat Bear Week. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. In Southern California, a dramatic video shows Westminster police officers racing into a burning home to rescue a trapped woman. The garage was already engulfed and flames were spreading quickly when they arrived. Inside, officers found a bedridden woman stuck in her room. They pulled her out. She was treated for smoke inhalation at the scene and is expected to be okay. It's like something out of the Fast and the Furious. Seattle police chased a driver in a stolen car. The driver swerves into oncoming traffic, breaks through a safety gate, and speeds onto a partially raised drawbridge, going airborne. Then the driver just keeps on going. The damaged car was found later. The search for the suspect is ongoing. The woman who pleaded guilty in a scheme to fraudulently auction off Elvis Presley's Graceland was sentenced to more than 4 years. Lisa Finley falsely claimed that Presley's daughter borrowed millions using Graceland as collateral and failed to pay back the loan. She threatened to auction the property if the Presley family did not pay her nearly $3 million. Despite many businesses focusing on online storefronts, Toys R Us is staging a brick-and-mortar comeback. Following a bankruptcy filing and a change of ownership, the company now only operates 6 locations, but has plans to more than double that number, with 3 openings slated in California and 1 each in Colorado, Iowa, Maryland, and Nebraska by the end of 2025. At its peak, Toys R Us had nearly 1,700 stores worldwide and controlled 1/4 of the global toy market. Major League Baseball now says it's going to start integrating robot umpires into future games. Robot umpires are not robots in the traditional sense. They're a system of cameras arranged around a baseball diamond, which are intended to determine whether a pitch is or is not in the strike zone. An MLB committee has now approved the use of the automated ball strike system, as it's known, though it won't be calling pitches. That's still the job of a human umpire. Instead, teams can now challenge 2 calls per game, letting the robot decide whether the umpire made the correct call. Fat Bear Week is back. The stars of the show are the bears of Katmai National Park in Alaska as they eat as many salmon as possible, all ahead of winter hibernation. The National Park Service released its Fat Bear Week March Madness style bracket. You can start filling out your bracket predicting which bears will be the fattest and therefore the winner. The 2-time defending champ is a female named 128 Grazer. This year's winner will be named a week from today. From girl group greatness to a soaring solo debut, Jade Thirlwall of Little Mix is launching a career that is dramatically, energetically, and perfectly all her own. The English singer-songwriter's critically acclaimed debut album, That's Showbiz Baby, dropped this month. It's larger-than-life pop with exploding vocals and synthy production, debuting at number 3 on the UK official albums chart, with the biggest opening week for a debut album in the UK this year. And today, Jade announced That's Showbiz Baby, the tour tour kicking off in February, bringing the pop star to the U.S., Canada, and Europe. Our Morgan Norwood got a chance to spend the day with Jade to talk about her triumphant return to the stage with the spotlight solely on her in tonight's Prime Playlist.
It's haunting, it's hypnotic, and it's 100% Jade. Angel of My Dreams isn't just a breakout single. It's a statement, a portal into the world of showbiz, where pop isn't polished, it's personal. And the viral music video with more than 14 million views tells the story.
In the Angel of My Dreams music video, there's footage of me like as a little girl singing in my living room for my parents and stuff. And it's just about remembering who I am and why I love to do this. You know, the industry has so many political and, you know, challenging factors to it, but I always have to remember that at the root of that, I just love music, I love writing, I love performing, and, you know, I love satisfying my younger self.
If you could say something to your younger self, what would you say?
I would say, Jade, we've made it. We've done it.
For more than a decade, Jade Thirlwall helped define a generation of girl group anthems as part of the group Little Mix, selling more than 50 million albums worldwide. With hits like Black Magic and Shout Out to My Ex, which have surpassed 800 million streams on Spotify alone. Well, now, Jade is making the bold decision to step away from girl group royalty to solo act, proving herself to her old fans and new ones. I'm in heaven, I'm in heaven. This year's Brit Awards, a crucial moment in her career.
I was so scared. It was my first like huge TV performance, and I knew I had 4 minutes, and I was like, I've got it.
You brought the cinema of Angel of My Dreams.
Yeah.
The music video right to the stage.
4 costume changes, wig changes, a trap door, flying at the end, a dance break. Like, you name it, I put it in that performance because I wanted to show everyone what I'm capable of. This is what I'm meant to do.
I'm home. And that's what it feels like.
Definitely.
After. And the Brit Award goes to Jade!
And Jade making history that night too, winning the Brit Award for Best Pop Act, the first ever girl group member in history to go solo, then win a Brit Award.
This is my first solo Brit Award. I need to thank the fans because that's why I've won this award.
And her debut album, That's Showbiz Baby, part of the emotional exhale. And we sat down for a little hands-on, heart-to-heart.
Okay, so Jade, you're incredibly creative, and we just thought that it would be great to create some phone cases. And I can already see the wheels in your mind turning, like you looked at the symbols. We're also gonna play a little game.
Okay.
It is called Pick a Symbol, Spill the Tea. Is there a little teapot here?
So we'll get started. This is honestly the best thing you could ever have done for me.
So the rainbow, you represent joy, right?
Yeah.
Name a time where you felt the most joy in your life.
The most joy. I think I feel the most joy when I'm on stage. This is a love heart.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Your ultimate heartbreak anthem.
This is quite old school, but I do just feel like it will always be Unbreak My Heart by Toni Braxton. Because when I was like a child, if my mom was playing it in the car, I'd be like in the back seat, just like looking out the window like,
From heartbreak bops to clubland synths, Jade's sound is what she calls a Frankenstein of her youth.
You know, obviously I am pop, and I'll always be a pop girl, but I love pulling influences from the music I loved growing up listening to. My mum loved Motown. Diana Ross was like my favourite artist. And then my dad would listen to like lots of like 80s power ballads, a lot of synth sounds. And then my brother loved clubland classics and like Euro dance music. And you can really hear that in songs like Angel My Dreams, that sort of
But behind the sonic swirl, honest storytelling, even when it's messy.
I want to talk a little bit about the album because there's a song on there that I think a lot of fans may resonate with, and that's Plastic Box. You kind of delve into something that I think a lot of us struggle with in relationships, jealousy. Walk me through that particular song, and where did you go emotionally for that?
Plastic Box is about me sort of finding a love letter of my partner's, of one of his exes or whatever, and him like falling in love with him straight away and me like spiraling that wasn't how it went for us. Yeah, and I guess writing the song was a form of therapy.
And the album artwork, another antidote to the multifaceted artist that she is.
So that Showbiz Baby album artwork is, I guess, a reflection again of all these multiple versions of myself. There's like the big version of me who is now in command of these little jades. So I guess that in itself is a message of like me taking control of myself and my alter egos rather than somebody else doing that for me.
From pop nostalgia to power ballads, Jade is building something real. One song and one charm at a time.
What do you have?
Okay, obviously Angel My Dreams. We've got Roses for It Girl.
Yes.
Throw me the roses. A Love Heart for Plastic Box. We got a bottle here just for, you know, partying, getting that work-life balance. I've got some My Little Ponies for the nostalgia. And Butterflies, because of Mariah Carey, to remind me to be a diva. Yes. And then finally, we've got a sheep to remind me to not be one.
And that's Showbiz Baby.
Some snazzy reminders there. Our thanks to Morgan Norwood. This Friday night at 8:30 right here on ABC News Live, the playlist presents Dale Play. This Hispanic Heritage Month, meet artists whose music is changing the landscape of the industry, honoring culture and transcending boundaries, featuring Prince Royce, Bomba Estéreo, and Iván Cornejo. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.